So what's the first thing you picture when you hear the words open fracture? Chances are your mind jumps to something really dramatic, probably something you saw in a movie. But the thing is, in the real world, a fall, a sports injury, the reality can be way more subtle. And that hidden danger, well, that's what we're going to get into today.
So really, try to picture it. Is it this gruesome injury with bones sticking out? And yeah, sometimes it is. But that's really not the full picture. What if I told you that one of the most serious kinds of fractures could be hiding behind a wound no bigger than a pencil eraser?
It really is like an iceberg, you know? What you see on the surface might just be a tiny little thing, but the real problem is everything happening underneath. And figuring that out is absolutely crucial because the part you can't see, that's what can cause the most damage.
All right, so first things first, let's just bust the biggest myth right out of the gate. You know, the one that Hollywood has been feeding us for decades.
Okay, so here's the actual medical definition. The key phrase to lock onto is allows communication. And get this, that doesn't mean you have to see the bone. Not at all. It just means that the skin, our body's armor, has been broken somewhere near that fracture. And that creates a direct highway from all the germs of the outside world straight into the sterile environment inside your body.
And the signs can be super subtle. It could literally be a tiny poke hole where a sharp piece of bone popped through the skin for a split second and then went right back in. Or it could just be a cut from the accident that happens to go deep enough to connect to the break. This is why there's a golden rule in the ER. If there's any kind of break in the skin near a fracture, you treat it as an open fracture, period. It's a full-blown medical emergency until proven otherwise.
And that right there is why this is such a big deal. It has nothing to do with how gnarly the injury looks. It's all about what gets in. Because that little hole, it's basically an open door for bacteria.
This quote really says it all. The second that skin breaks, the whole area is considered contaminated. Think about it. We're talking dirt, bits of clothing, whatever bacteria are floating around, all of it is now having a party right on that broken bone.
And the stakes here get really high, really fast. Just look at this. For a simple type I fracture, the infection risk is really low, less than 2%. But look what happens when you get to a severe type 3 injury. That risk just explodes, all the way up to 50%. That is literally a coin toss on whether you get a devastating, life-altering infection.
And we are not talking about a simple infection here. The big one they're worried about is something called osteomyelitis. This is a deep, nasty infection in the bone. And here's the problem. Bones don't have a fantastic blood supply. That makes it super hard for your immune system and even for antibiotics to get in there and fight off the bacteria. It can be a really, really serious problem.
Okay, so how do doctors figure out just how bad it is? How do they size up that infection risk on the fly? Well, they've got a system for that, a way to grade the injury that tells them exactly what they need to do next.
So this table here breaks down what's called the Castillo-Anderson classification. It's what doctors use in the field. A type 1, that's your small, clean poke hole we talked about, less than a centimeter. Type 2 is bigger, a bit more damage to the tissue. But type 3, oh boy. Type 3 is the big one. That's a whole different level of injury.
See, a type 3 isn't just about how big the cut is. It's about the nature of the wound. We're talking about high-energy impacts like a serious crush injury that's just wrecked the muscle and skin. Or maybe the wound is heavily contaminated, like if it happened on a farm where you've got all sorts of nasty bacteria in the soil. And here's a big one. If a major artery gets torn, boom, it's automatically a type 3, even if the skin wound is tiny.
So, the second that diagnosis is made, a clock starts, and it's ticking fast. The entire team in the ER is now in a race against that clock to stop the infection before it can even start.
And this is what that race looks like. It's a series of critical steps. Right away, job 1 is to stop the bleeding and lock that limb down so it doesn't get any worse. But check this out. The next step is huge. They have to get IV antibiotics going within the first hour. Just doing that one thing can slash the infection rate. Then the patient is on a fast track to the operating room. That has to happen within 24 hours for a major deep clean.
And when we say cleaning, we are not talking about a quick rinse. This surgical procedure, called debridement, is probably the single most important step. First, the surgeons actually have to make the wound bigger so they can see everything. Then, they flush the whole area with a ton of saline solution. For a bad injury, we could be talking 9 liters. After that comes the really careful work. They have to trim away every last bit of tissue, skin, muscle, you name it, that's dead or damaged. Why? Because that dead tissue is like a 5-star hotel for bacteria. They even scrub the ends of the bone itself.
And this, right here, is the absolute key. You can pump in all the antibiotics you want, but if you leave any of that dead tissue behind, an infection is pretty much a sure thing. This intense, thorough cleaning, this is what saves arms and legs.
Okay, so after that massive cleaning job, the next big question is, what do you do with the wound? Do you close it up? And believe it or not, the answer isn't always simple.
Basically, there are two paths they can take. If everything looks squeaky clean after that first surgery, they might just stitch it up right then and there. That's ideal, because it seals everything off from nasty hospital germs. But if they have even the slightest doubt, or if the injury was super dirty to begin with, they'll wait. They'll pack it open, maybe use a special wound vacuum, and then take the patient back to the OR in a day or two for what they call a second look. They get another chance to clean it out before they finally close it up.
And of course, we can't forget about the broken bone itself. Throughout all this, surgeons have to stabilize it. They'll use things like metal plates, rods that go inside the bone, or even external fixators that look like scaffolding. And this isn't just about getting the bone to line up, it's about creating a stable frame to protect all that healing tissue and give the body a solid chance to recover.
So let's just boil it all down. What are the big takeaways here? Number 1, a tiny wound can hide a massive problem. Never judge a fracture by its cover. Number 2, the real enemy isn't the broken bone, it's the infection. That's the battle they're fighting. Number 3, it is a flat-out race against time, and that first hour with antibiotics is absolutely golden. And finally, number 4, that intense surgical cleaning, the debridement, is the single most important step in saving a limb.
So that really leaves us with something to think about, right? We've just seen how a tiny little poke hole can signal a massive medical emergency. It really makes you wonder, what other minor signs in any part of our health are we tempted to just brush off when we really shouldn't?